So for this lecture, we're going to be exploring why companies are using marketing channels and discuss the functions of what these channels perform. I'll also review how channel members interact and how they organize to perform the work of the channel. We'll also identify some major alternative channels for companies to use. I picked this quote because many people overlook the importance of place when they're talking about the 4 Ps of marketing. While this area is not as exciting as developing a new product or as glamorous as promotion or maybe even predictable as price, without place, there basically is no company. If a company is unable to get its product, the term place in the 4 Ps of marketing simply refers to a more updated concept that is generally called supply chain. Now, one of my favorite web dictionaries for students, Investotopia.com, defines supply chain as all the activities, people, resources, and suppliers that will be used to get the product into consumers' hands. Now, one area we have to think about is raw goods because they need to be acquired by companies. Also, pre-made parts may need to be acquired by the company to be able to produce its final product. Now, this part of the supply chain to the company or moving products into the company is often referred to as upstream. And then once the finished product is produced and we need to get it to the customers, we often refer to that as downstream. So the better the supply chain, the lower the costs and increased productivity that will lead to basically a better bottom line. Now, there's also some other terms we need to understand. The terms supply chain management and business logistics management often refer to simply as the same thing as logistics. Logistics is focused on the movement and storage of materials and final products, basically from raw goods to final destination. Now, the final destination may not always be the final customer. It could be a wholesaler or a shipping company. At many universities, they even offer full degrees or concentrations in logistic management. This is a major position in many companies. Now, I need to point out that while the word logistics is sometimes used interchangeably with supply chain, they are really 2 different processes, as the supply chain is sort of the overall process and logistics is part of that process. However, you may find people and businesses use these terms differently than the more formal usage that I'm going to have in this lecture. This brings me basically then to distribution, where supply chain is looking at both upstream and downstream. The distribution channel only the downstream process. It's a process of getting the products from point A to B to C and all the other points till it basically gets into the consumer's hand. This process often includes a variety of intermediaries and other businesses, including things like wholesalers and distributors, post office, FedEx, even the internet. However, unlike the supply chain, distribution channel is only after the product is in its final form. Basically, the distribution channel is again part of the supply chain. So sort of to review, logistics is looking at getting things into the company that we need to produce the product and then getting that final product into basically the next hand that would then move the product on. They may not, though, continue to look at it once it gets to a wholesaler. That's where they stop. Whereas the distribution channel is taking it after it's finished. It's going to take it to the wholesaler and move it all the way through the chain, even though we're not talking about them physically holding on to the product, but they look at it from the point of finished product to consumer's hand. While these differences may seem negligible, in the real world, these areas are responsible for vastly different processes. This lecture will pretty much focus on the distribution channel of the supply chain. We'll have a separate lecture when it comes to logistics. So let's confuse you a bit more with some more terms. The distribution channel and the marketing channel are often interchangeable by business folks. Both are talking about a set of independent organizations that help make products available for use or consumption by the end user. A company's channel decision is directly affected by every other marketing decision. The price will help depend on whether the company is going to work with a national discount chain, use some, quality specialty store, or sell directly to the consumer online. Whether a company develops or acquires new products may depend on how well those products fit into the capacities of its channel members. Companies need to pay as much attention to their distribution channels as they do to promotion. The correct channel choice can give a company a huge competitive edge over its competition. Now, producers use intermediaries because they create greater efficiencies in making goods available to target markets. Let's take a look at only the economic distribution in terms of contact points. So if a manufacturer wants to deal with a customer, they can be talking directly to the customer. However, companies will want to talk to all the customers. That means that this may require 9 different channels. However, having a distributor or a retailer can reduce these contacts and save both the customer and the producer time and money. So now we can see, instead of having 9 contact points, that we actually have 6 contact points, and the distributor or retailer is sitting now in the middle. Producers use these intermediaries because they create greater efficiencies in making goods available to the target market. From an economic system viewpoint, the role of the marketing intermediary is to transfer the assortment of products made by the producer into an assortment wanted by consumers. The marketing channel members buy large quantities from producers and break them down into smaller quantities and broader assortments desired by consumers. So think of yourself as a college student going to that vending machine. Hershey is not making one single Hershey bar to be sent all the way to your vending machine. They're making millions of bars that will go to a wholesaler who will break it down and go to another person who will break it down, eventually get to a local distributor who's going to break it down, and then also gather other products that all need to go into that vending machine at once to allow you to have that broad assortment that you desire at that location at the time that you need it. Now, this decision should not be overlooked or minimized. In large firm distribution channels, it often involves long-term commitments with other firms. Management must design its channels carefully with both an eye on today's selling environment and tomorrow's needs and wants. Let's just do a quick review of the institutions that occupy the distribution channel. They fall into 3 major categories. The producer of the product, that includes people like craftsmen, manufacturers, farmers, or some sort of industry. The user of the product, and we're talking about individuals, household, buyers, institutions, government. And then there are the middlemen. They're the wholesalers or the retailers. This can also be the agent brokers. In making products and services available to consumers, channel members add value by bringing major time, place, and possession gaps that separate goods and services from those who use it. The channel performs 3 major functions. Now, not all channel members perform the same functions. These functions are transactional functions, buying, selling, and risk-taking assumptions. Logistics functions, such as assembling, storing, and sorting. And then there's also basically facilitation functions, post-purchase services and maintenance, financing, information dissemination, maybe even, some leadership. Now, these functions are all necessary for the effective flow of products and titles to the consumer and payment back to the producer. Now, members of the marketing channel perform many key functions. Some of these functions help to complete transactions. They may be things like information, gathering and distributing information about the consumer, the producer, and other actors and forces in the market environment. Promotion, such as developing and spreading persuasive communication about the offers. Contacts, just basically finding and engaging customers and prospective buyers. Matching, shaping the offers to meet customers' needs, including activities such as manufacturing, grading, assembly, and packaging. And then, of course, there is negotiating, which is reaching an agreement on price and other terms so that ownership or possession can be transferred. Another set of functions has to happen to fulfill a completed transaction. So we need some sort of physical transportation sometimes, or distribution, transporting the stored good or the finished product to a location. Financing, acquiring and using the funds to cover the costs of the channel work. And risk taking, assuming the risk of carrying out the channel work. We can think of many different types of companies. I used earlier Hershey as an example, who are making millions of chocolate bars at one time. But those functions have to all be done in order for you to have that Hershey bar in the vending machine at the time that you want. You can think of other companies such as Sea Ray Boats, who makes very large marine products, and they cannot basically sell the products at their assembly plants. So they need to get them to boat dealers. But the boat dealer themselves may not be able to take the financial risk of buying that boat. So we have to share basically these different functions, and depending on the industry you're working on will depend on how these functions get shared among the channel members. They all need to be done. The question is who's going to do them? And this is a major question that all companies need to be able to answer and do successfully if they want to have products actually get to their consumers' hands. A channel level refers to each layer of marketing intermediaries that perform some work in bringing the product and its ownership closer to the final buyer. Because both the producer and the final consumer perform some work, they're always part of every channel. Now, the number of intermediaries between the producer and the final buyer indicates the length of the channel. A direct channel refers to a marketing channel that has basically no intermediaries. It goes directly from producer to buyer, whereas an indirect marketing channel contains one or more intermediary levels. Now, from a producer's viewpoint, the greater number of channels means that they have less control and greater channel complexity. Moreover, all institutions in a channel are connected by several different types of flow. Now, this flow may include physical flow of products, the flow of ownership, the flow of payment, an information flow, and a promotion flow. These flows can make every channel with one or more levels even more complex. Taking a look at some of the flows you might want to say in distribution. The consumer channel figure here shows several of the common consumer distribution channels. The first channel would be what we just described as the direct channel because there's no intermediaries. The company sells directly to consumers. All the other channels are indirect marketing channels because they contain one or more intermediaries. Now the business channel is a little bit different. For one, you can see that there's less channels. However, like consumer channels, the business marketers can use its own sales force to sell directly to business customers, or it can sell to various intermediaries, which in turn sell to customers. While these charts make distribution look like this nice step-by-step flow, it can get very messy. So let's look at another very common pattern. As you can see, this is not as clean. This is also not that uncommon. Basically, the takeaway is that marketing channels perform many key functions. It's complex. Decisions about distribution should be made early on in the marketing cycle. Now you might see why people get whole college degrees in supply chain management. After all, this lecture is only talking about the distribution channel. We haven't even touched logistics. A conventional distribution channel consists of one or more independent producers, wholesalers, and retailers. Each is a separate business seeking to maximize its own profits, perhaps even at the expense of the system as a whole. No channel member has much control over the other member, and no formal mean exists for assigning roles or even resolving channel conflict. In contrast, a vertical marketing system, or VMS, consists of producers, wholesalers, and retailers acting as a unified system. One channel member may own the others, or has contracts with them, or wields so much power that they all must cooperate. And there are any number of combinations in a vertical system. The one that I'm showing here, the producer, wholesaler, and distribution are all owned by one company. So let's look at an example. This is actually an example of the Frito-Lay. It's very well known for its direct store delivery system, or the DSD system. It's the largest in North America. Frito-Lay delivers its chips directly to the stores to ensure freshness, and the company wants to merchandise their own products on the shelves. They believe that this gives them a competitive advantage. Their process includes a large warehouse system that gives them lots of flexibility. Frito-Lay also believes that the DSD system creates a stronger partnership with its retailers and consumers. On the company's website, it states it has over 15,000 routes, making 500,000 weekly service calls on about 315,000 different locations. The company made this decision as far as a distribution when it first started the business, because the owner and founder found that consumers were upset when they bought chips in a bag because most of the chips were broken. He found that by controlling the delivery system, he controlled the quality of his product by delivering the chips himself. Thus, he could ensure his product met the quality that consumers wanted, giving him a huge competitive advantage over his competition. Now, today, the company owns over 23,000 different vehicles. Now, while that might sound impressive, it pales in comparison to a company like AT&T that has over 72,000 vehicles. That's almost 5 times larger than Frito-Lay. Or the largest private fleet by a food company, that's the Pepsi Bottle Company, and they have over 40,000 total vehicles. I introduced this figure earlier in the lecture. This is an example of a multi-channel distribution system. Almost every large company and many small ones distribute through multiple channels. Now, a multi-channel system offers many advantages to companies facing large and complex markets. With each new channel, the company expands its sales and market coverage. It gains opportunities to tailor its products and services to specific needs of diverse customers. However, on the downside, multi-channel systems are harder to control. They can generate conflict as channels compete for customers and sales. Changes in technology and explosive growth of direct and online marketing have profound impact on the nature and design of marketing channels. One major trend is toward disintermediation, which is referring to basically cutting out marketing channel intermediaries or displacing traditional resellers with new types of intermediaries. A great example would be music streaming services such as Spotify or Pandora. They're rapidly disintermediating both traditional music store retailers and even some music download services such as iTunes. Marketing channel design calls for analyzing consumers' needs, setting up channel objectives, identifying major channel alternatives, and evaluating those alternatives. Designing the marketing channel starts with finding out what the target consumers wants from the channel. Companies should state their marketing channel objectives in terms of the targeted level of customer service. Are the customers looking for faster service or lower prices, as an example? The more add-on services supplied by the producer, the greater the channel level service. It's one thing to deliver a product, it's another to install that product for a customer. Think about how much different Amazon's delivery system would be if they even installed let's say, a quarter of the products they deliver. A company's channel objectives are also influenced by the nature of the company, its products, marketing intermediaries, competitors, and the environment. Environment factors such as economic conditions and legal constraints can also affect the channel's objectives and its design. Now, next, companies should identify the major channel alternatives in terms of the types of intermediaries and the number of intermediaries and responsibilities of each channel member. Companies can also determine the number of channel members by the use of each level. So there are 3 basic strategies available. There's the intensive distribution strategy. Producers of convenience products and common raw materials typically seek this. Intensive distribution is a strategy in which they stock their products in as many outlets as possible. Selective distribution uses one or more, but fewer than all of the intermediaries who are willing to carry a company's products. Most consumers' electronics, furniture, and home appliances brands are distributed in this manner. An exclusive distribution, some producers purposely limit the number of intermediaries through exclusive distribution, in which the producer gives only a limited number of dealers the exclusive right to distribute its products in their territory. Exclusive distribution is often found in the distribution of luxury brands, or as we said, selective products. So if we go back to the original lecture I had about the different product types, intensive would be those convenient products. Selective would be your shopping products, and exclusive would be your specialty products. Now, unsought products can sort of fit generally between the selective and exclusive depending on what that product is. Now, each alternative should then be evaluated against any economic controls and adaptive criteria. The responsibility of each channel member must be determined. The producer should establish a list price and a fair discounts for intermediaries. It must define each channel's member's territory, and it should be careful about where it places some new resellers. Multiple services and duties need to be spelled out carefully, especially if we're talking about franchisees or exclusive distribution channels. As this says, in the end of the day, all of this is marketing. So we've taken a quick look at distribution. Later lectures will look at logistics, and we'll also drill down into some of the resellers and wholesalers. Have a good day.